Biggest breaking news story in the history of our radio station, for sure. One of the biggest in the history of Pittsburgh sports, and joining us now to discuss from the Post-Gazette, our great friend, tremendous writer, Steelers insider Ray Fittipaldo. Ray Fittipaldo brought to you by AV-rated super lawyers LGKG, Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly, and George. Ray, was your Gaster flabbited yesterday? Were you surprised by what went down? Were you shocked? Where were you? And good morning.
I was surprised. I was down at the Steelers facility for their open locker room. They, of course, announced this after that, so we got the news, I guess, I don't know, half an hour after we left the locker room. So, yes, I was surprised at the timing. I don't think anyone really saw this coming, but I was right in the sense that I kind of, if it was going to play out that Tomlin wasn't here in 2026, it was going to be because he didn't want to be here, and that's exactly the way it played out. So now we have one of the more interesting off seasons upon us. They'll be hiring a head coach for the first time since 2007. I think a lot of your listeners and my readers are certainly excited about that.
Potentially the host that you're talking to for personal reasons and sports fandom reasons. Ray, we heard Mike Tomlin when he was on with Rich Eisen talk about John Harbaugh's firing. And upon reflection now, I think he knew then. And there have been rumors circulating for a couple of weeks now that he's into TV. If you had to venture a guess, how long do you think he's really been pondering this?
Well, I mean, 12 hours after they lost, he announced it. So I'm sure he knew this was coming. I don't know about before the season, but maybe certainly at some point during the season. I'm sure he and his family came to this conclusion. So, listen, this was a tough year, I think, for a lot of people in that organization, especially for Mike. You hear the fire Tomlin chants for the first time. I think that's honestly the first time I ever heard them. And I've been covering this team since 2013. And I'm sure that had to be tough for him and his family. I think that's, he's a human being. And to hear that, I don't know if that's what triggered it, but, maybe we'll find out if he does a presser with us or, he speaks to a reporter and he explains the decision. But I do know we'll get Art Rooney today, so we'll hopefully get some information on the coaching search and what their next steps are. But, in terms of Mike, at this point, we really don't know his reasoning or why he did this.
Do you think he will give a press conference? I know Cowher did when he stepped away.
Yeah, and Chuck Noll did as well. So I don't want to say I'm sure he will, but I think past precedent says that maybe the Steelers would encourage that if Mike is willing. But listen, Mike has to be willing to do it. And maybe he's not in that frame of mind right now. He did release a statement yesterday. So maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. But, you are right. Chuck Noll and Bill Cowher did do one with the Rooney family when they stepped down.
Do you think he goes into television for a year? Do you think he wants to coach this year? I know the Steelers have his rights, so if he did, they'd have to trade him.
Mike has never indicated that he's wanted to do television. He's always been kind of this gym rat, this guy who just loves the process of football. Not only during the season, Adam, like grinding film, but during the off season, grinding scouting film and going to these pro days. And I don't think people in the national media realize how involved Mike was in the entire program here. I mean, it was 12 months a year that he was deeply involved in the building of this roster and the coaching of this roster. So that would certainly be a change for Mike if he did do that. But hey, listen, he's been a full-time coach now for 30 some years. Maybe he wants a break. And nothing against these guys who go into TV, but it's a pretty cushy job if you can make 15, 20 million a year and you work 2 or 3 days a week. It's not too bad.
I think Cowher is proof positive of that. I think he wanted to go back into coaching eventually, and why would you leave the cozy studios of CBS making $20 million a year working 1 day a week whenever you could be, sleeping on the floor of your office grinding film. One thing we do know for sure, there's not a booster with a big enough blank check, so guessing he won't go to college. Ray Fittipaldo from the Post-Gazette joining us on the Fan Hotline, presented by Sullivan Super Service, Pittsburgh's trusted plumbing and HVAC provider for over 50 years. If it was out in the national media that he was contemplating this, and there was the report not too long ago that, hey, if Tomlin were to leave, maybe Chris Shula would make some sense. They might have had a discussion about that. Do we think that Art knew about this before yesterday?
I'm sure on some levels that he probably knew that Mike was maybe at the very least considering this, but to the point where he knew it was absolutely going to happen, I don't think that was the case. And, you bring up like the floating of the TV possibility, that's obviously coming from Mike's people. They wanted to create a possible landing spot for him where he could still, have some presence in the game and obviously make some coin while he contemplates what's next. So it's different for all coaches. John Harbaugh is in this coaching cycle. He doesn't want to take time off. It doesn't seem like Mike wants to be in this cycle. At least we haven't heard that yet. That hasn't been floated by his people. But the other interesting aspect of this, Adam, is the Steelers do retain his rights. So even if he does sit out one season, somebody would have to make a deal with the Steelers in 27 if they wanted to hire him.
Ray Fittipaldo with us here on the Fan Morning Show. Your colleague, Jerry Dulac, yesterday on Twitter said, don't necessarily count on the fact that the Steelers are going to clean house as it relates to the assistant coaches. I'd be surprised if the coordinators were back. Wouldn't you want your head coach to hire his own coordinators, unless they, of course, had the track record of a guy like Dick LeBeau?
Yeah, I think you're going to – I mean, that situation in 2007, loaded roster, very talented coaching staff. That was a unique situation where the Rooneys and the front office basically told Mike, this is the way it's going to be. And a guy who's 34 years old, he's not going to turn down a head coaching job because he couldn't hire all his people. Now, would this situation be different? I don't think this roster is as loaded. I think there's some talent there, but it's not like 2007. And I actually went back and looked when Chuck Noll stepped down. Bill Cowher only retained one of his assistants. That was running backs coach Dick Hoke. Everyone else was brought on by Bill Cowher, came from Cowher's staff, or, Cowher hired those guys away. And a couple guys from the Browns, Keith Butler and Bruce Arians. So I think it's totally going to be up to the new head coach. I think that's standard operating procedure. When you hire a new guy, you let him pick his assistants.
Do you think, and it's so early in this process, so all this is subject to change, do you think that the next coach, that from on high it'll be, hey, win now? Or is it going to be, all right, now is time for the proper reset, new head coach, older, aging roster? It might take a year or two, and we're okay with that.
That's a great question. And I don't know if Art will answer that today, but this is certainly an opportunity to do that. I thought Aaron Rodgers was tied to Mike Tomlin.
Yep.
I cannot see Aaron Rodgers coming back now. Cam Hayward has no guaranteed money on his contract. TJ Watt, I think it would be up to TJ. If TJ wants to move on and maybe try to win elsewhere, maybe they would try to accommodate that. But your point is very true. This is most of the highest paid players on this team are over 30, and their best years are probably behind them. So this would be an opportunity to do that. But as you know, Adam, they've never embraced that. I mean, go back to 2019. They're 0-2 or 0-3, and they trade for Minka.
Right.
Like they had that chance right there, and they said, nope, we're going to try to win. And they did win. They came within. They were playing a game on week 17, final week of the season, to try to get into the playoffs. Now, they didn't make it, but they got to 8-8 with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph. So they have never really embraced that reset or that rebuild, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, there's something that's admirable about that season in particular. Oh, Duck Hodges, Mason Rudolph, we don't care. We're the Pittsburgh damn Steelers. Last couple of things here for Ray Fittipaldo. Chuck Noll, 37, defensive coach. Bill Cowher, 34, defensive coach. Mike Tomlin, 34, defensive coach. Best guess, going to be a young defensive coach? I mean, it's been it's been 19 years, so it's hard to say we have a book, but if there were a book, that would be it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, but I do think the landscape of the NFL has changed in the past 19 season. This is more than ever an offensive league. Like the Sean McVay model is very good. You got the Kyle Shanahan model. I mean, those are very successful programs. And yeah, I mean, there's some dips out there from season to season based on injuries, but they've been really consistent with that program and the way those guys operate. So I don't know what the percentage is around the league, but I would say, I would venture a guess 60 to 70% of the head coaches have an offensive background. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers did go in that direction. But to your point, they certainly have gone for the young, defensive-oriented head coach. Doesn't even really have to have head coaching experience, guys who are up and comers, and that's kind of been their type over the years.
Ray, I spent a good deal of the first hour talking about the complicated emotions for a fan, trying to wrestle with this news. Like, I thought it was time, but at the same time, I'm 35 years old. My man never had a losing season, won a Super Bowl, and I think it's bittersweet. What do you think ultimately will be Mike Tomlin's legacy as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah, like you step back at it and look at it 5 years from now, or even a year from now. I mean, Super Bowl in his second season, 2 Super Bowls in his first 4 years. I would say a great first 5 years of his tenure. Now, after that, there was still a ton of talent there. They just never managed to figure it out, say, 2011 to 2025. 3-11 in the playoffs. Since that Green Bay the loss to Green Bay in the Super Bowl. Great offensive weapons. You think about the Killer Bees. Never really made a deep run with them other than 16, and Bell was hurt for that. So they never really were able to get that roster balanced enough in that era to do it. And then again, in this era, it was defensive oriented, no quarterback since Ben retired. It was, like you said, it was time, and I think they need a fresh set of eyes on this, a fresh way of doing things. And, that guy will probably be in place here within 3 or 4 weeks, I would guess.
Can't wait for Art Rooney II's press conference today, and I don't know that I've ever said that before in my entire life. Ray, appreciate it as always, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Adam. Talk to you later.
You too, bud. Ray is one of the best in the business.